A quorum being present, subcommittee will come to order. I'll start by asking unanimous consent that two written testimonies be entered into the congressional record. First, the testimony of Mr. Leonardo Cortina, a reporter with Veja magazine, and second, the testimony of Mr. William Ross Newland, III, Managing Director of the Delian Group, former station chief in Havana and Buenos Aires. With no objection, so ordered. Given this is a joint subcommittee hearing, opening statements will be limited to the subcommittee chairs and the ranking members. All other members may submit statements for the record within 5 business days, and I'd now like to recognize myself for an opening statement. Before I do so, the ranking member is on his way, so hopefully he'll be here by the time I conclude my opening remarks. At a time when world powers are negotiating with Iran over its illicit nuclear weapons program to reach a deal by the March 31st deadline, Iran has not shown a commitment to good faith negotiations to peace. For years, Iran has tested the patience of the world with its defiance of international sanctions and its support for terrorism. Nowhere is this more concerning for U.S. national security interests than in our own neighborhood, the Western Hemisphere. Today, I want to consider the implications for the U.S. and countries in this region if we continue to ignore Iran and Hezbollah's activities here in our hemisphere. Given the significance of the P5+1 negotiations with Iran and potential effects resulting from a deal or lack thereof, it is critical that Iran not have opportunity to exploit vulnerabilities in our region to cause harm. Congress has focused extensively on this issue with several hearings, visits to the region, and legislation which I authored entitled the Counting Iran and the Western Hemisphere Act, which became public law in 2012. I want to pause and thank Representative Higgins and Chairman Ross Leighton for their assistance in getting that passed into law. Nevertheless, I'm deeply concerned that in their hope for a nuclear deal with Iran, the Obama administration and governments in the region are not paying enough attention to this issue. In September 2014, the GAO released a report that found that the U.S. State Department had only fully addressed 2 of the 12 elements required by that public law countering the Iranian threat in the Western Hemisphere. As of today, the State Department has not fixed these gaps or conducted a reassessment of the Iranian threat in the Western Hemisphere. I believe this negligence is misguided and dangerous. Iran and Hezbollah have already demonstrated a willingness to conduct terrorist attacks in the Western Hemisphere. Consider the recent foiled plot by a Hezbollah operative in Peru in October of 2014 and the attempted attack linked to an Iranian diplomat in Uruguay last month. Or recall the 2011 attempted assassination of the Saudi ambassador to the United States in Washington, D.C., and the foiled Iranian plot in 2007 to blow up the John F. Kennedy Airport in Queens, New York. These events follow Iran's 1992 attack on the Israeli embassy 23 years ago yesterday, and the 1994 bombing of the Argentine Israelite Mutual Association, AMIA, in Buenos Aires. Yet today in Argentina, no one has been brought to justice for these attacks, even though Argentine prosecutor Alberto Nisman determined in 2006 that Iran was responsible. In contrast, the U.S. State Department's findings in its 2013 report to Congress that Iran's influence in the region was waning, Nisman published a report about the same time that provided evidence of Iran's subversive infiltration of multiple countries in the Caribbean and in Latin America. Unfortunately, much of Mr. Nisman's report went unheeded by the U.S. and the countries named in the report. Then, 2 months ago, Nisman indicted the President of Argentina, alleging that the governments of Argentina and Iran had engaged in cover-up regarding Iranian officials linked to the 1994 AMIA terrorist attack in exchange for oil and weapons. On January 18, Mr. Nisman was mysteriously found dead in his apartment with a bullet wound to the back of his head, right behind the ear, presumed to be murdered. This past Friday, Brazilian Veja magazine published another stunning report. The report found that representatives of the Argentine government received large amounts of cash from Iran in exchange for the AMIA attack to be covered up. Reportedly, Venezuela even facilitated the transfer of money directly from Tehran to the tune of about $800,000, according to the report, to Argentine President Cristina Kirchner's election campaign. Significantly, the report alleged that Iran gave this money in order to obtain nuclear technology and knowledge of Argentina's nuclear program. I recommend that article for other members of the committee. These are very serious findings that demand further scrutiny by the U.S. and governments within the region. Although these events seem to be compelling evidence that Iran and Hezbollah are up to no good in the Western Hemisphere, some believe that Iran doesn't prioritize Latin America as highly under President Rouhani as was the case under previous presidents, for Rouhani has yet to visit the region. However, Iran's diplomacy should not be the only indicator of Iran's activity in the region. According to Mr. Newland's written testimony that was submitted for the record, the Iranian logistical and intelligence infrastructure is in place in Latin America, even if their political and economic relations within the region have waned. Newland also states that the two most important centers of the Iranian influence are Cuba and Venezuela, while the tri-border region contains a community with many individuals providing financial support to Hezbollah. Similarly, Mr. Cortina, the same individual who broke the Veja story this past weekend, submitted written testimony that was included in the record. His statement outlines Iranian activity in Brazil and explains that the country plays the role of a safe haven for Islamic extremist groups. Cortina further elaborates that Brazil served as a planning and operations hub for the Iranian 92 and 94 attacks in Argentina and continues to exist today as an operational base, a weapons cache, a source of revenue for generation for the financing of terrorist operations and organizations, most notably Hezbollah. Coutinho's testimony quotes from numerous Brazilian law enforcement sources that Hezbollah and Hamas supporters have been detected in Brazil and that Hezbollah has sold weapons to Brazilian criminal organizations. In view of this information, I find it incredible that, according to Coutinho, Brazil recognizes Hezbollah as a legitimate political party rather than a foreign terrorist organization, and Brazil's parliament has not passed anti-terrorism legislation, which could improve coordination on these issues. Yet Brazil is not alone. The recent situations in Peru, Uruguay, Argentina involving Iran shows clear areas of vulnerability in the region. Additionally, the Central America Four-Border Control Agreement, originally signed in 2006, permits the free movement of citizens from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua without any restrictions, similar to the Schengen Agreement in Europe. This measure, while beneficial for trade, offers opportunities for exploitation by drug traffickers, terrorists, or even foreign fighters. Similarly, the Caribbean is also a growing place for transshipment of drugs and other contraband that Iran and Hezbollah could exploit. So in conclusion, Iran and Hezbollah are present in the Western Hemisphere. Last week, the U.S. Southern Commander, General John Kelly, testified to the presence of these actors in the region and also stated the U.S. challenge is our limited intelligence capabilities. In view of the fact that Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, it is pursuing nuclear weapons, and recent events show that Iran has capacity to conduct terrorist attacks in the Western Hemisphere. I believe the U.S. and other governments in the region must do more to address this issue. So with that, I'll turn to the ranking member who just joined us for his opening statement. Albio, welcome to the committee, and you're recognized for as long as it takes.